I'm Lauren from Pack Hacker, and in this video we're taking a detailed look at the Pioneer Savant Pack, which I've been testing for the last 2 weeks. Let's dive in. With Pioneer's first foray into backpacks, it's no surprise that this material is pretty sturdy because they put a lot of emphasis on their materials, and this bag is no exception. So this is their, they call it the Mandarin 840 shell. So essentially this is like a high tenacity nylon, 100%, and it is like it's like, well, kind of like a ballistic woven type deal here. I'm gonna bring it up a little bit closer to the camera so you can see it close up. It's a nice, like, sleek, slick material. It feels really nice. I have 2 cats, and all of my pet hair just kind of like rolls right off of this thing, and it's held up really well. We've got a little bit of like Pioneer branding down here, and then some branding on the back as well. But overall, this thing feels really nicely sturdy. Another thing that they emphasized was they wanted their bags to be able to stand up. So this does that, as you can see, pretty well. This base is actually pretty structured, which I'll show you once we actually get into the bag and this thing is emptied out. But we do have YKK zippers around here, which is also a great shout for durability. We've got some larger zipper pulls, which I didn't have any issues with them sounding really like jingly or jangly or anything like that. So no issues on that front. And then we've got this top carry handle. We have 2 little loops on either side of it. And here is a handle grip that is removable. I honestly didn't feel like this added anything. It is removable so that you can, like, it's like padding essentially. But for me, you can see this doesn't really have anything on it. So it's not like adding this added anything other than the fact that this top carry handle is pretty stiff. You can see that structure. It's not really going anywhere. And so it adds like a little bit of a softer feel, but honestly not much, not anything too significant. So didn't really feel like that was super necessary, but it's also not in the way, so it's not that big of a deal. But in general, it's a pretty simple exterior. And then we've got a luggage tag on this side here, which just opens with a little buckle, and then you can write your information there. And if you don't want that, it is removable. And there are a couple other removable features on this bag, specifically on the inside, so you can customize it a little bit more to your needs depending on what type of carry you like. The harness system, like the outside of this bag, is about as basic as it gets. The shoulder straps here have like a slick kind of nylon feeling material on the back side of it, and that is pretty much it. There's no sternum strap, there's no waist belt or hip belt. I didn't feel like I needed either of those things. However, these are really, really basic backpack straps, and they are a little bit on the stiffer side as well. They're not particularly uncomfortable, but they're not super ergonomic. Like, they don't really bend a ton with my body. They just kind of hang out, but I never felt like this bag was so heavy that I couldn't handle it. So, you know, your mileage may vary a little bit with that, but for me, it was okay. Then we also have a luggage pass-through right here, which is a little tight, but it works pretty well. And then we've got these just like 4 panels essentially of padding on this back panel. And you can see it's like a little elevated there, but not anything crazy. It's kind of like these shoulder straps here. Like, it gets the job done, but it's not the most ergonomic carry that I've felt in a backpack. But in general, it is pretty comfortable. The backpack wears like a pretty basic, generic backpack. Like I said, not a ton really going on with it. And with the length of this, I have a 16-inch torso, and it does kind of come down to like the very edge of my torso, and I don't really feel like it's digging into me. These straps are pretty easy to adjust on the fly as well. These are Duraflex buckles, and so, you know, if I needed to adjust the fit, it is pretty easy to do so. I think, again, the biggest gripe is with these shoulder straps here. They just don't add a ton of extra ergonomic feel. So if this backpack is pretty heavy, you're going to start to feel it over time. I wouldn't necessarily carry this like all day long or when it's really, really, really full. But for the most part, it gets the job done. As for additional compartments on this thing, there are only 2 other options. So we have, I'm gonna start with this back laptop compartment. So this unzips. You can see these like zippers are pretty chunky. They are YKK, so like I mentioned, we have a lot of luck with YKK. We like those. It's a pretty solid brand. They are really smooth. They're just like on the chunkier side. I think with how sleek this bag is, it was an interesting choice to do really chunky zippers because I think it kind of like makes it look a little less a little less sleek, I guess you could say. So looking into this back compartment here, we can fit up to a 17-inch laptop in here. I have a 13-inch MacBook Pro. This fits in this back sleeve, but you can see this is a 3D printed 16-inch. And so this fits in this like outside compartment, and that actually fits up to 17 inches, and then my 13-inch fits back here. This sleeve back here does provide a false bottom. The actual laptop compartment itself does not. However, they do say they have padding all around the compartment, and I will say that is true. Like, it is thicker along the edges and a little bit down at the bottom, but you don't have that false bottom to add like additional protection to your laptop. I don't really feel like if I set this down really hard that I would be super concerned, but it is something to keep in mind. So mine fits in there nice and easy. Just gonna set that off to the side, and then you have kind of a basic laptop compartment there. And then we also have the front compartment. So this is like a little half moon zipper here, and you can open that up and see everything inside. This thing has a ton of pockets all over. So in this front compartment, we have 4 little slip pockets. In here, I have a passport, I have my phone, and then down here, I have a jacket, which I'm gonna hold off on taking out for a second. Down here, we also have a key leash. So you can see I had to pull my keys out from the very, very bottom there. But this key leash, like the luggage tag on the outside, is removable with a buckle if you don't want to use it. Or if you wanted to attach your own, there's just like a little paracord here that's nice and loopy. Also headphones in here that I forgot I put in there. You can see they kind of slipped out of that pocket themselves. I think it's because I pulled my keys up, but that is something where I didn't really have an issue with things popping out, but it is a risk for things to pop out. But here we have this key leash, and that unbuckles. Super easy to use, honestly. I kind of really liked this design with just this very simple buckle. I think a lot of the times you have like a clip or something like that, and like, yeah, it's kind of easy to use, but just kind of satisfying to use a buckle, I think, in a very general sense. I think I just like buckles. But with the rest of this pack, you can see a lot of this space down here is filled by this extra layer. So this is something, the biggest thing that I noticed with this backpack is that, oh, and then I have something else down here. It's like a little makeup kit thing. The biggest thing that I noticed with this is you have to fill this space with something, or else the bag is going to get saggy down at the bottom. There's just really no way around it. Even when I filled out this main compartment, like as much as I could, because there's so much space down there, there's like actually part of the bottom of this bag is down here as well, like that structured bottom. Nothing in the main compartment filled out that gap, which meant that if it was empty, it was just kind of like sagging in all the time, which is more of an aesthetic thing. But a lot of bag companies, what they'll do is their pocket will probably end around here, and then this space just feeds from that main compartment. And without that feature, what we ended up with is this kind of saggier front. So if you do want to fill this with packing cubes or something like that, I would recommend putting them in this front compartment before you get into the main compartment for another reason as well. But that was really the biggest thing here. I just kind of felt like it was wasted space, especially because I didn't need to use it all the time, and then it impacted what it looked like. If you're finding this video helpful, hit subscribe so we can keep making content to help you travel smarter. But for now, let's get into the main compartment. So front compartment, all set, all cleaned out. And then we have this main compartment here. So this zipper goes all the way around. And what that does is gives you a really wide look at the inside of the main compartment. It doesn't, again, because of that extra space down here, you can't really lay this completely flat if there's anything in that front compartment. Let me actually just put this sweater back in here for you so you can see what I mean. If I put this sweater back in, that space is all filled up. I go into this main compartment. I can't like push it down in the same way because this front area, this front space is so filled with stuff. So it's kind of like a nitpicky thing, but if you are opening this bag all the way, that's something to keep in mind if you really want that functionality to lay flat. On the other hand, that sweater right now is acting as almost a gusset. A lot of bag companies will put like a gusset right here to prevent it from falling completely open, and the sweater's kind of doing that for me, which is kind of nice. Just kind of depends on your preference, I guess. So in here we have a packing cube, I have a little notebook, and then I have a water bottle. So this is where I put like a majority of my storage, especially if it was like flatter items that all went like side by side. But if you start really loading this up with stuff, you don't have a ton of space. It's almost like a little bucket shape here that you could load up. We also have like lash or attachment points here where you can attach some gear, some stitching here. It's a first edition, which is kind of cool. I think they've, nailed down that sort of like aesthetic thing. But with like these front pockets here, I didn't find them super useful for myself. It's almost like this pocket is for everything flat or rectangular, and then this pocket is for everything that's like a little bit rounded and loopy. But if the rounded and loopy things aren't perfectly rounded and loopy, then it can look a little lumpy on the outside. So kind of just got to figure out where your gear goes and what looks the best for you, what feels the best. But you do have a bit of a base down here as well to kind of start stacking things up. The liner here is a little bit detached, so it's kind of like bubbling into the main compartment, but again, more of an aesthetic thing. Doesn't really impact any of the function or anything like that. It does feel like a really slick material. This is 100% nylon as well. It's a little ripstop, or this is the ripstop here. So in terms of storage, I think it really comes down to like what kind of gear you have and what you want to put where. My biggest gripe with this that I mentioned was this front compartment being like a majority of that space that just wasn't super functional for me, how I personally pack my gear. But it might not be that big of a deal for you. Kind of, it's nice to have a spot to put a big jacket that's not at the very, very bottom of the main compartment that's also filled with all of your stuff, right? That might be a huge selling point for you. But in general, I think that Pioneer creates like really solid, really well-built gear. So it's no surprise to see that this kind of falls in line with that. I think there are just kind of a few functional things that when we get our hands on a ton of different bags, we start to pick up on in bags like this that are like those first editions. So excited to see where they go with it. So there you have it, the Pioneer Savant Pack. Thanks for keeping it here at Pack Hacker, your guide to smarter travel, and we'll see you in the next one.